All right, so my lovely document camera didn't actually record the lesson as I was teaching today. Surprise, surprise. My new one is ordered, so hopefully this will no longer be an issue, but I will just record this example that we did not get to. So I apologize if you needed to rewatch any of the previous examples. If you have questions on those, certainly ask me and I can help. But for this last one, so if I do try direct substitution and substitute 0 in for t, I would have the square root of 0 squared plus 9, so the square root of 9, which is 3, and then minus 3, meaning this would just be 0 on the top. And then in the denominator, 0 squared is just also 0. So I do have 0 over 0. This one, you might notice, there's nothing for me to factor. I can't factor the t squared plus 9 even inside of the square root because it's a sum of squares, not a difference of squares. Also note that I cannot split this and say this is the square root of t squared and the square root of 9, so it's t plus 3. That is not mathematically correct. And then there's also nothing for me to expand, as in the previous example. So when you have a square root, the way to rewrite this is to multiply by, in this case, the conjugate of the top.
Like he was joking, but like it was really funny. I talked to Miss Keel, by the way. So
She told me. Thanks.
Bye, Mrs. Jones.
Bye. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, just a couple of students stopping in, sorry. So I'm multiplying by the conjugate of the top, and I'm multiplying that by both the top and the bottom. So the conjugate is, as you can see how I have it written, your two terms are still the same, but rather than having a difference, I now have a sum. So you're just changing the plus to minus or minus to plus. And now on the top, I do have to FOIL this. So I multiply the first terms. The square root times itself just cancels out the radical, so that's just t squared plus 9. So I have...
On tomorrow. Sorry I can't join you.
That's okay.
I'll check on Sue tomorrow morning just to make sure everything's going okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm multiplying the... Sorry, another interruption. Multiplying the square roots, the squares just cancel each other out. So I still have the limit as t approaches 0. And this would just be t squared plus 9. And then when I multiply the outer terms and the inner terms, I'm multiplying the square root by positive 3 and then by negative 3. Those just cancel out, which is why we're multiplying by the conjugate. It's canceling out all of the square roots on the top. And then I multiply negative 3 and positive 3, and that's negative 9. In the denominator, do not distribute the t squared to both terms, just leave it as factored. So leave it as t squared times the quantity square root of t squared plus 9 plus 3, and you'll see why. So here, the plus 9 minus 9 on the top cancel. So I just have the limit as t approaches 0 of t squared over t squared times the quantity square root of t squared plus 9 plus 3. And now the t squared, because I didn't distribute it, I can see it's now a factor on the bottom, which would cancel with the top. And on the top now, I just have 1. So I'm not going to rewrite this again. I'm just going to use direct substitution right away. So on the top, I just have 1 over the square root of 0 squared plus 9 plus 3. This just becomes the square root of 9, which is 3, plus 3 is 6. So my limit is 1 over 6.